Welcome back to News USA. Boy, are we living in some trying times. We are living through a time that will be in history books many, many years from now when we are long gone. These situations, what's going on in the United States right now will be in history books. Children will be learning about this time. Now, Twitter has now moved to permanently ban President Trump from Twitter based on some recent tweets that he sent out earlier today. There has been talk that President Trump should move over to another site where he can tweet. It's supposed to be a free speech type of site called Parler. Let's take a look at that. And it seems as if Apple is threatening to ban Parler from the App Store. And this is in the wake of Trump and Trumpists, or whatever you want to call them, being encouraged to move over to that site. Here is the Parler CEO. And they pretty much want to let Parler know that they're not going to tolerate any type of incitement of violence or incitement of any more attempts at taking down the U.S. Capitol, because apparently there is a group planning or threatening more violence in the future. Let's jump back over here to Twitter. To be honest, I think that I feel like they're trying to do the right thing to try to quell violence, but this could possibly push, those who are already at the edge even more over the edge, or push them off the deep end. Now let's take a look at what Twitter has to say. It's not that long. We'll just run through it so we see exactly what they had to say about the reasoning behind banning President Trump, and we'll see if it makes sense or if you think this is uncalled for and pretty much trying to silence President Trump. Now, keep in mind, context is everything. If me or you were saying things that could incite violence, we would be arrested. We would be held accountable in a court of law. But you have to make the decision yourself whether you think that this is further incitement of violence, or if he's just the president, that is, speaking his mind or speaking to his supporters. Let's take a look at it. After close review of recent tweets from the @RealDonaldTrump account and the context around them, specifically how they are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. In the context of horrific events this week, we made it clear on Wednesday that additional violations of the Twitter rules would potentially result in this very course of action. Our public interest framework exists to enable the public to hear from elected officials and world leaders directly. It is built on a principle that the people have a right to hold power to account in the open. However, we made it clear going back years that these accounts are not above our rules entirely and cannot use Twitter to incite violence, among other things. We will continue to be transparent around our policies and their enforcement. The below is a comprehensive analysis of our policy enforcement approach in this case. So here's the overview. On January 8th, 2021, President Donald J. Trump tweeted, "The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." Shortly thereafter, the president tweeted, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. Let's continue. "Due to the ongoing tensions in the United States and an uptick in the global conversation in regards to the people who violently stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, these two tweets must be read in the context of broader events in the country and the ways in which the president's statements can be mobilized by different audiences, including to incite violence, as well as in the context of the pattern of behavior from this account in recent weeks. After assessing the language in these tweets against our glorification of violence policy, we have determined that these tweets are in violation of the glorification of violence policy, and the user @RealDonaldTrump should be immediately permanently suspended from the service. Assessment. We assess the 2 tweets referenced above under our glorification of violence policy, which aims to prevent the glorification of violence that could inspire others to replicate violent acts and determined that they were highly likely to encourage and inspire people to replicate the criminal acts that took place at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. This determination is based on a number of factors, including President Trump's statement that he will not be attending the inauguration is being received by a number of his supporters as further confirmation that the election was not legitimate and is seen as him disavowing his previous claim made via 2 tweets, 1 and 2, by his deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, that there would be an orderly transition on January 20th. The second tweet may also serve as encouragement to those potentially considering violent acts that the inauguration would be a safe target, as he will not be attending. So what they're saying is he could be trying to put it out there, or it's being interpreted as, with President Trump not being there, that's a safe spot for them to go and have another riot or uprising, whatever you want to call it. The use of the words American patriots, in quotations, to describe some of his supporters is also being interpreted as support for those committing violent acts at the U.S. Capitol. The mention of his supporters having a giant voice long into the future and that they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form is being interpreted as further indication that President Trump does not plan to facilitate an orderly transition, and instead that he plans to continue to support, empower, and shield those who believe he won the election. Plans for future armed protests have already begun proliferating on and off Twitter, including a proposed secondary attack on the U.S. Capitol and state Capitol buildings on January 17th, 2021. Let's read that again. Plans for future armed protests have already begun proliferating on and off Twitter, including a proposed secondary attack on the U.S. Capitol and state Capitol buildings on January 17th, 2021. As such, our determination is that the 2 tweets above are likely to inspire others to replicate the violent acts that took place on January 6, 2021, and that there are multiple indicators that they are being received and understood as encouragement to do so. Now, I don't know the significance of January 17th, 2021. Maybe somebody can enlighten me, but I'm baffled that there is a community, or that there are talks for a second attack on the U.S. Capitol and state Capitol buildings on this day. It looks like this is going to be another attempt to try and stop the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden. And let's just be honest, it's because of all of the rhetoric that's been going on over the past couple of months from President Trump. He said early on before the election that if he lost, it was because it was rigged. He was already sowing the seeds. Now, like I said earlier, I think that Twitter is trying to do what they can to quell violence, and they think that they're doing the right thing. But in all honesty, I think that President Trump can take this and use this to his advantage to rile up his base even more. They may not need him to rile them up. They may do it on their own. They'll see this as the left silencing them, communism. They're trying to silence their voices. That's the way they already see it. I think this can be a dangerous move that will move them to further validation that that's the way it is, or that's what's happening to them. This is a slippery slope. We're in dangerous times. Hopefully they don't get too much worse. But I just wanted to put this out there and go over this. This is important news. This is an important situation. We're going to have to see what the fallout is. As of right now, President Trump hasn't said anything in response to this that I know of. Hasn't been any videos or whatnot. No press conference. But knowing Trump, he probably will say or do something. There's going to be a response. That's my opinion. Could be wrong, but I feel like there will be a response. And whatever that response is, hopefully it's not bad, but it has the potential to be. This could further sow the seeds of violence, pushback, anarchy, whatever you want to call it, because this further confirms what these people already believe, that they're trying to be silenced, that their voices aren't allowed to be heard. I don't believe that to be the case. I think that Twitter is just trying to do something to stop it. But sometimes when things are already too deep or too far down a rabbit hole, it gets twisted, gets convoluted, it gets hard to see what the right path may be. Like I said, hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully this blows over. We'll see. Stay tuned to News USA.